I stood outside the bronze-framed doors of the Huntington Grand's executive ballroom in Chicago, my messenger bag digging into my shoulder. The security guard glanced at my badge and frowned. "Sorry, Mr. Lockwood, you're not on the guest list." For a split second, I thought he was kidding. I'd been to Cobalt Systems Innovation Summit every year for 4 years running. Through the crack in the double doors, I could see former colleagues in sharp suits, champagne glasses catching the light from crystal chandeliers overhead. "I've been with Cobalt since day one," I said, keeping my voice steady. "This has to be an error." He tapped his tablet. "Only pre-approved guests tonight, just doing my job." "What's going on?" Ronald Cross stepped forward from behind him, charcoal suit, silk tie that likely cost more than my monthly rent. His smile was polished, the kind honed in boardrooms and pitch meetings. "Curtis," he said with a nod, then turned to the chief guard. "I've got this." I braced for an explanation, maybe even an apology. Instead, he gave me a look that read more like condescending sympathy than respect. "We're at capacity. Tonight's strictly for public-facing team members." "I built VoxStream," I said, "from nothing. 9 months of non-stop work." "The company values that," he replied coolly. "But tonight is about optics. Investors need to see something new, something that signals where we're headed." I looked past him. On the stage backdrop, bold white letters declared, "Innovation Achievement of the Year, VoxStream Platform, presented by Andrew Sullivan." Andrew stood near the podium. Stanford alum, 6-month intern, Navy suit immaculate. His family connections ran deep with 3 of Cobalt's biggest investors. I remembered mentoring him last spring, walking him through architecture diagrams, early prototypes, the neural logic behind real-time emotional voice analysis. I thought he was genuinely curious about the craft. I didn't realize I was handing him my life's work. Ronald exhaled. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Curtis. It's just a PR event. Your role isn't changing." His eyes flickered. Regret? Annoyance? Hard to tell. I opened my laptop right there in the hallway, typed a quick sequence, attached 6 files, selected the full distribution list, and hit send. 7:11 p.m. I snapped the lid shut. "Check your inbox." Then I turned and walked away, through the gleaming marble lobby, past waiters balancing silver trays, out the revolving doors, and into the biting Chicago night. By the time I reached the parking garage across the street, my phone began vibrating. Once, twice, then non-stop. I didn't need to check the screen. I knew exactly who was calling. Everything I'd meticulously documented over the past 6 months was now live. 4 years of being unseen. 4 years of watching others take credit while I stayed silent, clinging to the belief that results would eventually speak for themselves. Tonight, I didn't make it past that door. And honestly, I didn't need to. I don't need a seat at their table anymore. I'm building my own. Have you ever poured everything into a place, stayed loyal through thick and thin, only to be treated like you never mattered? If you're still here, thank you. Maybe you know that hollow ache, seeing someone else step into the spotlight for something you created alone, in the dark. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. And let me know your thoughts on today's one in the comments. I read every message. My name is Curtis Lockwood. I was 33 that year. People used to say I was a brilliant engineer who didn't get office politics. To them, that was a flaw. To me, it just meant I cared more about solving real problems than playing pretend. I grew up outside Portland in a house that always smelled like pine needles and old paper. My dad worked as a systems analyst until his boss claimed credit for his process model. After that, he launched a consulting firm from our basement. My mom taught high school physics and kept our feet on the ground. They both drilled into me one lesson: integrity and skill are the only things that truly hold value. I believed them so fiercely it blinded me. I graduated from Carnegie Mellon with degrees in computer engineering and cognitive science. My thesis explored using AI to decode emotional states from vocal cues in real time. That work led me to Cobalt Systems, a scrappy startup trying to fuse voice analytics with customer experience. Back then, Cobalt was 32 of us crammed into a converted West Loop warehouse. No beanbags, no fancy titles, just raw excitement, the sense that we were building something that mattered. I fit right in. I pulled all-nighters, lived on takeout, argued architecture over cold pizza until sunrise. Then Ronald Cross showed up. Hired as director of product strategy, he had everything I lacked: charm, a Rolodex full of VCs, and the uncanny ability to pitch a vision with 0 slides. 4 startups under his belt, 3 successful exits. When he entered a room, attention followed. At first, I respected him. He stopped by my desk one afternoon after reading my internal memo on emotional voice recognition. "Curtis," he said, "you've got something special here. You just need someone to shape it into a story investors can't resist. Let me help." So we teamed up. I engineered the architecture, refined the algorithms, built the models. He wrapped it all in glittering narrative. "Imagine," he'd say, "calling support, and the system already knows you're upset before you finish your first sentence. That's VoxStream, redefining how companies connect with real people." I thought we were a strong duo. I was wrong. The first red flag came during an autumn investor pitch. I wasn't invited to. Later, a colleague told me Ronald had unveiled his groundbreaking concept in AI voice analytics. My research, 8 months of labor with not a whisper of my name. I confronted him in the break room. "You didn't mention me." He clapped my shoulder like I was being dramatic. "Ideas are just one piece of the puzzle, Curtis. What matters is who tells the story. Don't worry, your name will be in the technical docs." I wanted to believe it was an honest slip, so I said nothing. That was my first mistake. The pattern repeated. I built. He branded. I innovated. He took the stage. When I finally raised concerns with HR, they recited the script. All work created during company hours is Cobalt property. Attribution is an internal matter. Slowly, I faded. Every time I saw a demo bearing someone else's name, knowing I'd written every line of code, I felt myself vanish a little more. Yet I stayed, kept working, clung to the hope that excellence would eventually be seen. I was wrong again. 7 months before the awards gala, I started something new, a total overhaul of the original algorithm, faster, sharper, capable of tracking emotional shifts across multiple languages in real time. I told no one, didn't touch Cobalt systems, built it all on my personal laptop, late nights at a quiet cafe near my apartment. I wasn't naive anymore, and I refused to lose something I'd never legally owned, but had poured my soul into. I named it Spectra Voice, a neural listening system. 2 weeks after the first working prototype, I went to a Cobalt happy hour at the Copper Bell, not for drinks but to watch. The company was changing. Flooded with venture capital, it was sidelining builders like me. The spotlight now belonged to figures like Andrew Sullivan, young, well-connected, profiled in Business Insider as a rising star. To me, he was still the intern who, in his second week, asked me to explain the difference between supervised and unsupervised learning. I took a stool at the bar, ordered a whiskey, and stayed out of view. 40 minutes in, Ronald arrived with Andrew. They took a corner booth a few yards away. Either didn't see me or didn't think I mattered. Classic rock played loud enough to force raised voices. I have a skill few know about, a residue of my cognitive science research. I can read lips. I sipped my drink, scrolled through my phone, and watched. "Excellent work," Ronald said. "Your presentation to the Redwood Group was flawless. They're calling you a visionary." Andrew shrugged. "They think the platform is mine." Ronald laughed, sharp at the edges. "As long as they invest, authorship doesn't matter." "Curtis isn't the type to make noise," he added. "He'll keep his head down." Andrew hesitated. "I don't feel right about it. I only refined the interface. The core architecture is his." Ronald leaned in. "Listen carefully. This isn't about who did what. It's about who looks like they did it. You're young, connected, photogenic. You were chosen. Curtis? He's exactly what people expect an engineer to be. Skilled doesn't equal visible." Silence. Then Ronald raised his glass. "Welcome to the real game." I don't remember how long I sat there after they left. When I finally stood, my hands were shaking, not from fear, but clarity. I was used to having my work taken. What cut deeper was hearing them treat it like strategy, cold, calculated, legitimate. That night, it all became clear. No one was protecting me. No rules mattered except what could be hidden or justified. If I wanted what was mine, I couldn't play by their rules. I had to create new ones. I went home, reopened SpectraVoice, and wrote nearly 3,000 lines of code. More importantly, I created a folder on my personal drive, Rebuild. Inside, I began documenting everything. Timelines of concepts I'd submitted and watched. Vanish, email threads with Ronald about uncredited solutions, personal repo commits showing I'd built modules weeks before pushing to company systems, screenshots, memos, meeting notes, not for revenge, for proof, clear, detailed, indisputable. Over the next 2 weeks, I reached out to former colleagues. Engineers pushed out for not being a cultural fit. Their stories mirrored mine. Hard work, real contributions, then erasure once the product succeeded. Julian, ex-lead of back-end infrastructure, told me Andrew had asked him to demo a data pipeline optimization I'd proposed internally, then presented that demo to the board 3 weeks later as his own. The pieces clicked. It wasn't just my story. It was a system, a filter that elevated the right people and burned the rest as fuel. Every system has vulnerabilities. If developed right, SpectraVoice would expose them. I wasn't alone anymore, and they had no idea where I was building from. 4 weeks after that night at the Copper Bell, I sat in a minimalist River North cafe, the kind startups use before they can afford offices. On the table, a pitch deck, lukewarm espresso, and someone I never imagined meeting. Rachel Donovan, founding partner at Lightwell Ventures, a firm known for spotting breakthrough tech before anyone else. She'd backed the team J.P. Morgan later bought for over $300 million. Rachel saw potential hidden in code. I'd met her through Julian. After leaving Cobalt, he'd pitched Lightwell once, didn't land funding, but kept the connection. When I told him about SpectraVoice, he asked, "Have you thought about starting your own company?" At the time, I hadn't, but sitting at that cafe table, I said for the first time, "Yes, I'm ready." Rachel watched my presentation without interrupting. I explained that SpectraVoice wasn't just voice analysis. It was an adaptive emotional intelligence system that learned from interactions, creating intuitive communication between humans and technology. More importantly, I showed her I hadn't just built an algorithm. I'd built an ecosystem, redesigned data architecture, optimized APIs, scalable integration frameworks. When I finished, she was quiet a long moment. Then she nodded. "You didn't come here to ask for money," she said, steady and direct. "You came to start a revolution. I respect that." I kept my expression calm, though adrenaline surged. I can't promise it'll be easy, but I can promise I won't quit. Rachel smiled. "Good. Hold on to that resolve, Curtis, and never go back asking for a seat at a table that didn't want you in the first place." We shook hands. The seed investment was $3 million. Enough to launch the company, hire a core team, and file a provisional patent for SpectraVoice. I named it Resonance Labs. The name captured what we were building, technology that resonated with human experience. After that meeting, everything moved like dominoes. I rented office space on the 4th floor of a converted factory. Bright, quiet, private. I chose my team carefully. Julian led infrastructure. A former Amazon front-end specialist handled UX. 2 engineers from rival firms, tired of politics and performance theater, joined soon after. Every one of them had been pushed aside somewhere else. All carried talent, precision, and a hunger to prove something. We made no announcements, no website, no press, no LinkedIn. We operated in silence, invisible to the outside world. Yet I still went to Cobalt every morning, sitting at my old desk as if nothing had changed. Inside, though, 2 realities ran parallel. One already dead, the other just beginning to breathe. That Tuesday, Ronald held a meeting to announce Andrew's promotion to lead product architect. He gave a short speech about Cobalt's new direction. Everyone applauded. I clapped too, but my eyes stayed on the slide behind him. One section described, almost word for word, the emotional mapping framework I'd outlined in my demo file 11 months earlier. They hadn't just stolen my work. They were rebranding it without me. The following week, I filed the SpectraVoice patent, timing the submission to coincide with Cobalt's annual award ceremony, the one I'd once hoped to attend. This time, I didn't care who got the trophy. I'd moved beyond needing their validation. In parallel, I reached out to potential clients. Through old contacts, I connected with 4 companies who'd used Cobalt's platform but found it impersonal. I gave them early access to Spectra Voice. The results exceeded every projection. In all 4 trials, customer satisfaction jumped over 35% compared to existing systems. One client said, "We thought AI could only classify emotions. This actually understands people." I didn't sign contracts yet. It was early. But I knew I had something Cobalt could never replicate, not just technology. Belief, the conviction, that innovation isn't about selling more. It's about creating genuine connection, and I would never let them take that again. 5 weeks after filing the patent, I got an email from HR. Staff allocation for annual ceremony and award nominations. I knew the event. Huntington Grand, logos everywhere, cameras flashing, speeches about vision and collaboration. Last year, I'd been on the short list, then quietly removed. This year, I expected nothing. The meeting was on the 9th floor, crowded, tense. Ronald sat at the head, radiating confidence. Andrew stood nearby, smiling like he already knew the outcome. I took a seat in the back, jotting notes in my worn notebook, the same one I'd used to sketch ideas when I still believed effort was enough. Ronald recited the usual: growth metrics, system performance, quarterly wins. Every achievement tied to the platform I'd built in silence, my name never mentioned. Then came the award. "Andrew Sullivan," he said proudly, "for his transformative contribution to redefining voice-based customer engagement through adaptive emotional intelligence." Applause filled the room. Andrew gave a modest nod, humble enough to disarm jealousy. No one questioned it. I stayed silent, not surprised, not even hurt. It felt like watching a scripted play. I'd moved from backstage to the audience, and I knew the ending would be different. Ronald wrapped up. "Each department sends 3 reps. Engineering will be represented by Andrew, Colin, and Wesley." He turned to me with a polite smile that stung. "Curtis, I know you've contributed significantly, but space is limited. Hope you understand." I nodded. "I understand. I'll stay at the office and work." The room went still. No one spoke up. No one defended me. In that silence, I finally understood. I never had a place here. Not at that event. Not in their vision of who mattered. The ceremony was Saturday night at the Huntington Grand. I didn't attend, but I made sure I was present in my own way. That afternoon, while they adjusted ties and rehearsed speeches, I sent an email. Recipients, the entire Cobalt Executive Board, CEO, legal, HR, major investors. Subject: technical summary and patent ownership concerning voice analytics platform, urgent. Attachments: the provisional patent for Spectra Voice, filed under my name in Resonance Labs. A timeline proving I developed it independently, off hours, without company resources. A list of 8 potential clients who'd signed NDAs with Resonance Labs. A clear warning: any platform replicating Spectra Voice's structures would face immediate legal action. I hit send, shut my laptop, and walked out. That evening, I sat in a downtown diner, ordered a burger, and reviewed final design files. At 8:23 p.m., likely just as Ronald stepped on stage to crown Andrew, my phone started vibrating. First message: Cobalt's legal counsel. "We need to speak immediately." Then, Ronald: "What the hell did you just do?" Then, Andrew: "Curtis, can we please talk?" I didn't reply, just looked at the screen, smiled faintly, and went back to eating. The next morning, I didn't go to Cobalt. I went to the Resonance Labs office, my name etched in small letters on the frosted glass door. The team was already there. Julian placed a laptop on the table, showing an email from a client. "We're ready to move forward with the pilot under the proposed terms." I nodded. "Sign it. It's time." We spent the day finalizing contracts, pushing platform updates, and locking in IP coverage with our attorney. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like breathing freely for the first time. That afternoon, sunlight pouring through the windows, I realized I might not have stood on their stage, but I'd built my own. And this time, The seat at the center belonged to me. 4 days after the awards night email, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. I expected legal counsel. Instead, it was Lawrence Bennett, Cobalt's senior executive director who never touched the engineering floor. He wanted to meet to discuss the situation and clear up misunderstandings. I agreed, but not at Cobalt. I chose a neutral workspace in the Loop, leased under Resonance Labs' name. No more gray zones. Lawrence arrived on time, navy suit, silver watch, eyes sharp but tired. "We don't want this to escalate," he said. "Your email has created complications." I didn't soften my tone. "Complicated is generous for 4 years of stolen work." He gave a small nod, acknowledging, not apologizing. "Are you really walking away, leaving everything you built at Cobalt?" "What I built was taken, renamed, and handed to someone else. What I'm building now is intact and growing faster than you realize." He studied me. "Then what do you want?" "Nothing," I said evenly. "I'm simply reclaiming what's mine. Legally, intellectually, and ethically." He let out a thin laugh. "If you launch this product, we'll respond. We have resources that can crush a startup before it lifts off. I have lawyers, a patent, a signed client, and the truth." Silence. Then he sighed, pulled a thin envelope from his briefcase, and slid it across the table. "An acquisition offer. By Spectra Voice and Resonance Labs. You'd stay on as Director of Innovation, 4 times your salary, plus equity." I didn't open it. "And Andrew stays," he added. "He'll move to legacy systems. You'd lead all voice tech development." I shook my head. "Too late, Mr. Bennett. I'm not going back to a system where I must prove my worth daily while others just show up with the right connections." He leaned back. "You think clients will stick with a startup that lacks infrastructure, funding, or enterprise credibility? They don't need credibility. They need results. And they've already seen 35% satisfaction gains in 3 weeks, something Cobalt hasn't managed in 7 straight quarters." Lawrence didn't argue. For the first time, he just sat there, silent. As I stood to leave, I said, "Next time you look for someone to lead innovation, choose the person who actually creates it, not the one who tells the best story in a boardroom." I walked out feeling lighter than I had in years. That night, while the team debated hiring and ML refinements, Julian got a message from Cobalt Marketing. Andrew had resigned. No announcement, just a sterile internal notice. I felt no triumph, only clarity. He'd been part of the same machine, smart, ambitious, but playing a game he didn't design. The next day, Rachel Donovan called. She congratulated me for refusing the buyout and said Frontier Capital wanted into our pre-Series A round, 8 more months of runway, enough to scale the platform, build a customer success team, and push into international markets. "Remember when I asked why you left a major company?" she said with a knowing smile. "Now I understand. You didn't leave. You leveled up." She was right. I hadn't left a company. I'd left a system that no longer deserved me. And now, I didn't need them anymore. They couldn't say the same. 3 months after meeting Lawrence, we signed long-term contracts with 5 major clients across e-commerce, healthcare, and finance, all former Cobalt users. The news wasn't public, but word spread fast in tech circles. We moved into a larger space near the financial district, an address where industry legends once started. Julian joked the building carried startup energy. For the first time, I felt it too. I hired carefully, not by resume prestige, but by the look in someone's eyes, that spark of someone overlooked but never stopped creating. Andrea, denied promotion at Cobalt for lacking executive presence, now led client integration. Wesley, who left after his work was outsourced, headed core development. Each carried a story, a piece of what the old system wasted. Work wasn't easy. Some nights I slept at the office. Once, a memory leak nearly crashed our demo. The client threatened to cancel. We fixed it in 36 hours, sent a patch and full technical breakdown. They didn't just stay. They asked to expand to 3 new modules. Julian showed me a printed client email. If this had happened at Cobalt, they'd have blamed the team. Here, it became part of our learning. That's exactly what I wanted to build, a company unafraid of mistakes, only of refusing to fix them. By month 4, we held a private investor demo, no glossy stage, just a whiteboard, hand-drawn diagrams, and a live prototype. Afterward, Karen Fletcher, a former IBM engineer, looked at me and said, "There's no shortage of voice AI startups, but people like you, who understand both the system and the human side, are rare." 5 days later, Resonance Labs received Pre-Series A offers totaling $7 million from 4 different funds. We chose Karen's, not because it was the largest, but because she understood what we were building. And right when I thought the storm had passed, Cobalt made its move. On a Thursday morning, while we were discussing expansion into Europe, I received an email from legal. Cobalt had filed an intellectual property infringement notice. They claimed Resonance Labs was using algorithmic structures substantially similar to those developed at Cobalt and demanded we shut down SpectraVoice within 14 days or face legal action. I wasn't shocked. I'd expected it for months. Still, it felt like someone trying to clip the wings I'd just learned to use. We held an emergency meeting with our lawyers, engineering leads, and investor representatives. After 3 hours of analyzing every line of the claim, our attorney stood up and said firmly, "You have nothing to worry about. Legally, you've done everything correctly." Still, I remained cautious. I drafted a formal response attaching full documentation, development logs, device history, patent records, and most ironically, a copy of an old internal email from Cobalt's own legal advisor who had once dismissed my proposal as lacking commercial viability. 5 days later, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. The caller ID read, Preston Wade, Chairman, Cobalt Board, a man who rarely appeared publicly, let alone reached out directly. "Mr. Lockwood," he said, his voice calm and measured, "I'd like to talk." For a second, I didn't speak. This wasn't middle management anymore. This was the man at the very top. "We underestimated you," he continued. "Perhaps our entire system did. You did something few people dare. Walk away from the table and build your own." I said nothing. I waited. "You may not need us anymore," he added quietly, "but the company is struggling." There was something different in his tone. No threat, no strategy, just acknowledgement. Maybe even respect. And in that moment, I understood. They were no longer attacking, they were negotiating. But this wasn't their board anymore. Not this time, not ever again. I met Preston Wade 2 weeks after that call, in a private office on the 38th floor of a downtown tower. No logos, no assistants, just him and me, sitting across from each other in a minimalist room, lit by recessed lighting, with an abstract painting behind him. Layers of color, as complex as the story between us. "I'm not here to threaten you or rescue anyone," he began, his voice steady, the tone of someone who'd survived too many boardroom battles to need theatrics. "I asked you here because if you continue on your current trajectory, Cobalt won't be able to compete within 8 months. You know that." I didn't deny it. Resonance's latest build of SpectraVoice was already running pilot programs in 5 countries. Our platform wasn't just faster, it was learning faster thanks to the reinforcement module Wesley had developed and the adaptive feedback system Andrea had designed. Cobalt, weighed down by bureaucracy and constant turnover, couldn't catch up. "You can maintain your pace," Preston continued, "but to scale globally, you'll need more than funding. You'll need legal infrastructure, international compliance frameworks, deployment networks, things that, whether anyone likes it or not, are still in our hands." I studied him. This was negotiation, but different from Lawrence's. No condescension, no attempt to dominate. He spoke like someone addressing an equal, an opponent, not a subordinate. "And what do you want in return?" I asked. "Nothing excessive," he said, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "We'd like to acquire 30% of Resonance Labs, no operational interference, no rebranding, just a strategic stake." I sat silent for a few seconds. On paper, it was tempting. 30% at our current valuation meant enough capital to open 3 international offices, double our staff, and accelerate rollout. But I knew better. Money is never just money. It always comes with strings, some written, some invisible. "I need time," I said. Preston nodded. I won't pressure you. You've already won a significant round, Curtis. I just hope you're thinking about the long game. When I stepped out of the building, a light drizzle had started. Each drop against my coat felt like a reminder. In this world, every victory has a cost. That evening, I met with the leadership team and told them everything, every word, no embellishment. Julian spoke first. This is what they do. When they can't outpace you, they buy you. Wesley tapped his fingers on the table. But without new capital, our growth velocity will plateau. Competitors are already watching us. Andrea stayed quiet for a while, then looked directly at me. The real question is, what do we want to become? A startup that flashes and fades, or a company that endures because it kept its core intact? I didn't answer immediately, not because I didn't know, but because I wanted all of us to answer that together. 4 days later, I returned to the 38th floor. Preston was standing by the window, looking down at the financial district like a general surveying a battlefield. I'm not here to sign, I said. I'm here to thank you. He turned, one eyebrow slightly raised as if he'd anticipated this. I thought carefully, I said, and I realized what I'm building isn't just technology. It's a new way of working, a model where every voice matters, where people aren't buried under titles and politics. I placed a document on the table. The new Resonance Labs charter we'd rewritten over the past 4 days. We're opening a Series A round, strategic investors only, but with limits. No one can own more than 12%, and no one gets a board seat. Preston smiled faintly. You're smart. Most people come here asking for money. Very few come here to protect their power. I didn't come to ask, I said. I came to make it clear. This world doesn't have just one table. And those of us who were once pushed away are building a new one. You're welcome to sit with us, not to lead, but to listen. He was silent for a few seconds. Then, he extended his hand. I won't invest, at least not yet, but I'll be watching you closely. When I left the office, a strange calm filled me. Not because I'd turned down a lucrative offer, but because I hadn't traded myself to get it. 2 weeks later, Resonance announced its Series A raise under the new charter. Within 4 days, we received more than 30 investment offers, including from 5 funds that had once rejected me back at Cobalt. We chose 3 partners, not because they offered the most money, but because they understood what we were building. We weren't looking for an exit. We were opening a path, and the same people who once shut us out were now standing outside, watching, waiting to see if this new table could stand. But I already knew. It wasn't just standing. It was growing. Every single day. Because it was built by the very people they once called extras. 14 months after the night I was told to wait outside, I stood on stage as the keynote speaker at the largest voice technology conference in the country, held in Boston. I didn't wear a suit. I chose a dark gray sweater, the same color as the walls at Resonance Labs' office, because I wanted to represent what we'd built, not what I'd walked away from. From the stage, I looked out at hundreds of faces, investors, researchers, industry leaders, and among them, a few people I used to work with, including Andrew. He was sitting in the 4th row. He looked different now. The arrogance in his eyes had softened into something else, something that looked a lot like growth. I began my talk with a familiar line, this time with a quiet smile. You can wait outside. A murmur rippled through the audience. I let it settle before, continuing. That was what someone once told me 14 months ago when I stood outside a room where I thought I'd finally be recognized. But instead of waiting, I opened another door. And today, I'm not here to talk about revenge. I'm here to talk about building. I told my story, not to embellish, not to accuse. I never mentioned Cobalt by name, never said Andrew or Ronald, because I'd learned that when you tell a story truthfully, people will recognize themselves in it, and they'll know exactly where they stand. I spoke about how we'd redesigned more than a platform. We'd redesigned a way of working, a company where every member owned a piece of what they built, where mistakes weren't punished, they were studied, where ideas didn't have to fight each other to survive. When I ended with the words, "The most powerful seat isn't the one someone gives you. It's the one you build with the people who believe in you," The room rose to its feet. 5 days later, I received an email from Andrew. No excuses, no long explanations. Just one sentence. I was wrong. I don't know where it all started, but I know I stood on the wrong side. If you ever need help, even just someone to listen, I'm here. I didn't reply right away. I saved the message, not as a reminder of victory, but as proof that people can change if they're brave enough to admit they were wrong. That same week, Resonance Labs closed a partnership with a German firm, our first step toward expansion in Berlin. We now had over 60 full-time employees from 9 different countries, speaking 15 different languages, all sharing one belief: work should reward the people who actually do it. I still arrived at the office first every morning. I walked the floor, checked in with the engineers, listened to the design team's new ideas, and sometimes just made coffee with Julian. We weren't the ones who left the old game anymore. We'd become the ones designing the new one. One quiet Saturday evening, I stood on our office rooftop overlooking the city. Across the river, I could see Cobalt's building. The lights were still on, still busy, but I felt no bitterness, no anger, just a nod to the past. The past that taught me sometimes you have to leave to truly grow. I remembered the night I'd walked away from that award ceremony. The echo of that sent emails still heavy in my chest. Back then, I had no idea what would come next. I only knew that if I didn't act, I'd stay the same, forever waiting outside. And now, I want to say this, not just for me, but for anyone listening. If you've ever been pushed away from the table, told you're not ready, not connected, not enough, remember this: you don't need their invitation. Build your own table. And one day, the same people who turned you away will ask for a seat. Just believe that what you're building matters. And keep building. We started with an email. Now we're rewriting the entire framework. And that table, the one I once dreamed of sitting at, is right here in this office, not reserved for me, but for everyone who was ever told, you can wait outside.